I was very struck by the young leaders on the streets. They weren't afraid to say they were gay. This is so far from the days of Bayard Rustin and all of that 50 years ago, but we're also very far from those sort of macho postures that black people needed in order to take on or confront white authority. We've sort of gone beyond that again. And once again, these changing definitions make it possible for whites to join, to become allies. I know he's not here, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and everyone is terribly disappointed, and so am I. But that article on reparations, which didn't appear in the Nation, but never mind, is one of the most provocative things I've read in a long time. It was really sensational and made me think about things I didn't necessarily want to, because I always kind of pushed off reparations as this impossible thing. But he says also that it's wrong to think that the dualism, white and black in American society, hasn't made such kind of special hardships for blacks that when you talk about, solutions or policies that benefit all the poor and aren't just sort of geared at blacks, that those are unreal. I think that that's not true or not correct, because now that we're interracial no longer means white control or white definition. I think that's what the racial justice movement now has going for it, that, you know, these are the people setting the terms now.
Yeah, and there's a great passage that we'll get to later where Martin Luther King makes exactly that observation. This next, and some of these themes will recur because Daryl certainly raised some larger points that we want to continue to work with. This is an article by a St. Louis journalist investigating the conditions among black and white sharecroppers in the South, and offered the then quite novel and provocative argument that life in what he called the largest slum in the world had not appreciably improved since the Civil War. So Isabel, this is largely the story that you tell of the lives of amazing individuals, families, and communities in the Jim Crow South that triumphed over these conditions in the warmth of other sun. So this is a moment to give us some texture to what this journalist is calling our attention to in the nation.
Well, the long story of African Americans in this country has meant that for most of our country's history, African Americans have not had the very basic right to choose what they would do for a living and where they would live. And that's the reason why I feel that the Great Migration is such a watershed moment, not just for African American families, but in our country's history in general, because this was the first time that actual individuals made the choice, had the courage to make the choice for themselves as to where they would live and what they would do for a living. So that when you think of 246 years of enslavement, followed by 90 years of Jim Crow era, in which the substitute, you might say, the next stage or the morphing of enslavement meant sharecropping. These were the essential options that African Americans have had for most of the time that we have been on this soil. And so what did sharecropping mean? Sharecropping meant that you had very little choice based upon the economy of the South, but to be tied to the land that you did not own, and you worked for the right to live in the land that you were farming. And it meant, from what they said, can see to can't see, working the land with the hope that your planter might look kindly upon you and allow you a little bit to clear at the end of the year, which of course the majority of them did not clear. And these were the lives of many generations of African Americans from the time of the end of Reconstruction until well into the 20th century.